Hey guys, it's Chris with Drop Dice. So these videos apparently are not going to be on schedule. They're just going to be random. And a little bit of that is I got married, I'm moving, my life is kind of upside down. So let's just jump into it. Now, fair warning, this being RPG A Day 2016, I'm using this as a chance to kind of open up and talk to you on a personal level. So this video probably will go past my normal 10 minutes. So just kind of bear with me here. This is days 8 through 16. We're just going to catch up. And I've got it all on the screen here like we did last time, so let's just jump right into it. Hardcover, softcover, digital, what is your preference? So this one is kind of a hard one. I usually buy digital first, and if I like the game, I will then spring for a hardcover or softcover, whatever is available. But on a personal note, I actually really like good quality soft covers. I'm not really sure why. I had one for Usagi Yojimbo by Sanguine Press, and it came in like a smaller size. It was like about a half, maybe a third of the size of like a standard RPG book, and that was perfect. It fit in my backpack. I could take it with me everywhere. If I was in between classes or work, I could bust it out and I could read some section and learn a little bit more about the world. And I really love that size. I don't know what the exact dimensions are. I think if I remember right, Savage Worlds makes an Explorers edition, which is a little bit smaller, and that's basically the same size as the Usagi Yojimbo by Sanguine Press. That is actually my favorite format. I don't see it very often, so I get what I can usually. If it's a game that I've turned out that has turned out that it's something I love, I will usually buy a hard copy of it. Or if it's a game that's very complicated, like to me, there's something about like Star Wars by Fantasy Flight that really changes the game if you don't have the books on hand. So getting the digital books, or excuse me, getting the physical copy books actually really helps me in that game. And so I've got a couple of those, but really price is the big thing to me. I don't find it a very attractive idea to buy a lot of $50 hardcover books for games that I might not play that often. So I'd rather spend $10, get a digital copy, and have an enormous digital library, which is filling up one of my terabytes right now. So number 9 is beyond the game. What is involved in your ideal session? So snacks. I'm a fat kid at heart. I think for me, the snacks and the food is usually like the social aspect of the game. Like my ideal game session would be we go over to somebody's house, or it's done in my house, and we go to the basement or wherever the game space is, and we set down our stuff, and then we immediately go in the house, we check in with each other, and we're like, hey man, how'd your week go, blah blah blah. Maybe we arrive early enough that we could have like a little family dinner, and we like cook a pot roast or something like that. That'd be amazing. I love pot roast. And then we sit down for the game session after everybody's kind of ate most of their food. If you're getting seconds, you just grab your seconds plate and take it down to the table because, hey, we got to start. We're only here till like 2 a.m. And then you play for 4-6 hours. I love long games in person. In fact, when I was in Boston, I used to run 12-hour games with 12 people, and it never bothered me. I did it every Sunday religiously, and it was a ton of fun. I love doing stuff like that. So for me, the session time is also something to do with it, and that's not necessarily the game itself, but the actual session time. I find that 6 hours in person is where I really like things. And then lastly, I would probably say the social bit of it, which I guess all of this is kind of the social bit of it, or at least the dinner portion thing at the beginning there, and maybe to me, what I like to do is at the end of a game, especially an in-person game, is just to kind of hang out, catch a beer, talk about, hey, how'd that game go, blah, 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 check in with your players, or maybe check with a player who's interested in running something and be like, hey man, I heard you wanted to run Savage Worlds next week. What do you think about? And kind of toss some ideas around. I really like the social aspect of gaming. I think for me, it's led me to a lot of really good friends, and so I think that's the thing that I really associate D&D with is the friendships that came with that. So let's see, the largest in-game surprise you've experienced. So I'm a very analytical player. I haven't really experienced a whole lot of surprises as a player in a game because usually I can kind of anticipate where things are going. And I don't look at that as a bad thing. I look at how the execution is done. And that's what lets me kind of judge on whether I think a GM is doing a great job or if they're still kind of working on developing those skills. Like, for example, the elevator fight in the Provokers. I totally saw it coming, but the execution was done well, and I had a lot of fun watching that. I think for me, the biggest surprises in game actually come from when I sit in the GM seat. There was a time where Murdoch was playing a character who's an assassin who's very Sasuke-like. If you've seen Naruto, he basically has a older brother who's also an assassin. Their family is dead, and the older brother killed the family. Very Naruto-like, right? And they kind of have this weird relationship where he idolized his older brother, but he's finding out the truth. And there was this really cool scene where he met with one of his older brother's counterparts, who was using illusionary magic to provide each character with a alternate version of their own memories. So during this bit, Murdoch went more into his backstory for Aiden and talked about Aiden's childhood, who he grew up with after his parents were gone, what happened the night that the house burned down and his parents died, because he didn't really see who the killer was at the time. And I think for me, that's where the surprises really happen, when players kind of dig deeper into their stories. I don't think GMs really have a whole lot of tools to really surprise players, but I think players have a lot of surprises that they can work in on their own through gameplay. And I think that that's a pretty awesome thing that we get from RPGs. So let's see, which gamer has most affected the way you play? So this one I want to say probably in two parts. So I think the one that has most affected me would probably be my first GM, Oz, or Ozone. He was our first long-term GM. My friend Donovan ran my very first game, but to be fair, I don't think either one of us, or really any of us at the table, really fully grasped what that game was about. Oz kind of guided us and mentored us as GMs, and the thing that I always remember about him was how analytical his games were. We were like freshmen in high school and things like that, and we would get puzzles in Latin. None of us spoke Latin, none of us knew Latin except for Oz, and we'd have to figure out these puzzles and answer back in Latin, and Oz would be kind of teaching us Latin as we went. And then we would get traps that if a rogue rolled up and he's like, disarm trap, and that would be basically the equivalent of ripping off a panel and cutting the red wire, because that's what you're supposed to do. In Oz's games, that would get you killed because you're basically shooting from your gut. Instead, a rogue would have to analyze the room, see what the trap's about, and if he didn't see what the trap was about, he couldn't figure out an answer. My favorite trap, which I've used before a couple times because I really love it, is a trap where you go into a room and it's full of this black and white dust. And when you get in there, your players are usually going to look at the dust and be like, what the hell is this? And they're going to start inspecting it. At that time, you close the door behind you, or behind the players, locking them in the room. The players in the back, usually a fighter or something like that, because they're not going to be super inquisitive about the dust on the floor, will go over and try and check the door. Have the rogue notice something underneath all this dust. There's a bunch of copper coins and shards of armor and things like that. And once you start moving around this dust, you find that there's a bunch of different gear and things like that. No weapons, just trinkets and things like that. So a peephole opens up on the other side, and an orc shows up and he says, give me all your shinies. Push yourselves against the back wall. We'll take the shinies and then we'll let you through. No harm. So your players, of course, are going to be like, no, screw you, orc. I'm going to kill you. Well, the orc closes the shutter, and you hear this whirling sound. And then the orc opens the shutter, and he goes, last time, give me all your shinies, push up against the back wall, or else I'll kill you all. And then the group will, of course, turn around and be like, nah, we're gonna bust through there and try and kill you. In fact, your fighter may try and do it. It's a steel door. It's bound by steel. It's hard as hell to go through. Your player may be able to force his way through, but typically he's not going to be able to. It's about this time that you let the person who's been paying attention to the sand on the floor enough know it's not sand, it's not dust, it's actually ash. At that point, your players are going to wonder why this room is full of ash. They've been kicking it up. It's in the air. It's now going to cause problems with concentration checks. They may get disadvantages to skill checks and things like that. As your rogue is starting to kind of figure things out, you have this whirling sound stop, and then you hear click, click, and then the slider opens up. The orc says again, "Give me all your shinies or else I'm going to kill you. You will die. Is it worth your life?" The players again, "No, of course not," because they don't want to give up their gold and things like that. This room's the best if you put it after the dungeon on the way out. Oh man, it's beautiful. The orc slides the door. From the side and the back, you hear, and there's this hum in the air and the smell of ozone, and your players realize that there's lightning in the room. It's this arc that is in a grid shape, and it slowly starts creeping forward. The arcane energy crackling. The rogue realizes what's going on, and he's only got minimal time to put it together. There's copper coins, bits of leather, so what he puts together is a staff with coins on the inside, basically, wrapped in leather. It allows him to conduct the electricity and save the party from being electrocuted to death. The whole time, remember, the room is full of ash. You have orcs on the other side, and once the trap goes once through the room, it's got to recharge, so that gives your players a chance to break out of the room, either through the locked door in the back or through the steel door in the front. If they make it through that steel door, you have a corridor full of crossbowmen. It is a messed up trap. It is awesome, and your players will love it. That being said, if you're a player and you want to try GMing, use that trap or create your own. O's used to throw traps like that at us all the time, and that's really what's affected me, my trap designs, my general way of running games. I think that because of O's, I firmly believe that humans are the most vile thing in D&D, not any monster. So let's see here. What game is your group most likely to play next, and why? So the next game that we will probably play, which is going to be the group that you guys usually see online, is going to be Legend of the Five Rings Season 2. Now, I've promised this for a while. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of life events coming up, including a move that's happening this weekend. So the next time you see me filming, it will be from a new office, hopefully. Because in the move I get my own office, which is going to be a lot of fun. I'll be able to put some stuff up and have it a little bit more decorative back here instead of a couch or kitchen or whatever else I've had in the background in the past. But we are working on figuring out what's going to work best for a time and day, because the guys are real excited. I know that we've got some viewers that are very excited to get back to it, and I am super excited to get back to the Lying Darkness and figuring out what's going on in the colonies. It should be a very interesting Season 2 for them. With that said, we will probably play that game until it reaches its logical conclusion, which kind of answers number 13 for me. What do I think makes a successful campaign? When a campaign reaches its logical conclusion, I don't necessarily mean that the characters die or the characters accomplish everything that they set out for. To me, if the adventure was to go kill a dragon, killing that dragon is the logical conclusion, unless maybe the dragon was controlled by someone else and then killing that person's the logical conclusion. I don't like playing campaigns endlessly forever. Now, what I do like to do is break it up into arcs. If the campaign is kill the dragon, okay, we've accomplished that. That campaign is over. But we're going to use those same characters because we found out something that dragon was controlled by someone else. So that is a new campaign here, which is just really Arc 2 or Season 2, whatever you want to call it, and then 3 or 4. That being said, I love really long campaigns. Usually our campaigns last like 8 months if we were playing every week on Sunday, which was our usual in Boston. Which doesn't really happen online. It's a little bit harder to schedule things, so okay. But I love long-term games and things like that, so that really helps me decide if a campaign's been successful, is the content and the extent of how long it went. 14, what is my dream team of people you used to game with? So I've tossed around this idea, and I guess this would be my semi-unofficial invite, but the guys that I first gamed with when I was in high school, Corey Ebert, Donovan Sullivan, and Jonathan Rampinall, and Jason Woodson, if we could even find him, I would love to do a game with those guys again. just as kind of like a straight up everybody's on camera, everybody's got a beer, and it's D&D. I think that would be a fun game, just simply because those are the guys. We all started D&D together. None of us really had experience. When Corey joined the group, we had been playing for a while, so we had a little bit of experience. But Corey was a ton of fun to have at games, and I think it'd be great to have those guys back for just like an OG style game, right? So let's see here. What is your best source of inspiration for RPGs? I'm gonna say my wife, Ariel. She reads a lot. She's a very educated woman, and she loves storytelling, and she happens to love a lot of the same things and elements that I love about storytelling. Whereas I'm not so much of a written word kind of person, she is. And she really helps me bounce ideas off of her to come up with something that sounds logical and interesting. A lot of times what I will do is I will write up a game idea in my head, and then I will talk to Ariel and I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? I want to take the guys and introduce them to a demon that plays drums that's made up of arms, and he dances on these drums to produce this music, but while the music's going, the music corrupts humans. What do you think about that? And then she'll turn around and she'll challenge me. She goes, well, how do the humans defeat that then? And things like that. And I think that really helps me out with fleshing out ideas, because she's more concerned about how the story will go than necessarily the mechanics. And I think that really is a great thing for me to have around, because I could sweat all the mechanics myself. I'm more concerned about, is my story making sense? Does it sound like something that players would be interested in? And I think that she's had a great improvement on my games, just being that little source of inspiration for me. 16 is historical person you would like in your gaming group, and what game? Let's see. The first emperor of China. No, I'm not really sure. First emperor of China would probably be a lot of fun, but he'd need to speak English because I have no idea about Chinese. Really, I can't think of anybody that I could think of. I guess the only person I could think of that's not really a great historical person, it's more of a personal person to me, would be my mother's father, who died when she was a very young girl. And I never really got to know him, but I've been told that I look a lot like him, that my personality's a lot like him. And he's always been kind of this person that's a little bit out of reach for me, making me think that maybe he's where I get some of my personality quirks and things like that from. It's a person who I've never really known. Being able to share something that I really like with a guy like that seems like a good thing for me. So I would think that my maternal grandfather would be who I would invite. With that said, that is days 8 through 16 of RPG Day 2016. As always, guys, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to share, comment, like, and subscribe. If you are answering these questions, please include a link to your own videos or your blog or wherever you're doing it, because I'd like to get to know some of you guys a little bit better, and maybe we can talk about it some more. The other place that would be great for you to share that with is the RPG Brigade, which is on Facebook. A lot of the gamers who are doing this are sharing their videos and their links on there. So I would recommend that you join up and get involved inside our community. We also have BrigadeCon 2016 coming up, which should be a whole ton of fun, and I will do a separate video talking about what BrigadeCon is and what I will be doing for BrigadeCon. Perhaps maybe before I move, but most likely after I move, because right now that's all of my time. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in, and as always, I'll see you at the gaming table.